Documentary series Our Georgia begins with a new episode. We will travel to the past and follow the ancient caravan route of the Silk Road through Georgia. This historical road linked civilizations from the North and the South Caucasus. The Silk Road united humankind. It was a way of development, progress, science, and culture. It promoted the spreading of new ideas. At the same time, this road was frequently won by fire and sword. Devastating wars were started because of the Silk Road. Whole cities, states, and entire ethnic groups were destroyed. Whatever has happened will happen again, and whatever has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. The Silk Road is a story of people's eternal interests and aspirations. In this sense, it is a past that tells us about the future. Today, this trail is covered with grass and shrubs in some places, but the direction, which has been traveled for centuries, is still easy to notice. Georgia is a small country, and the trail is not long. However, there is a surprisingly diverse environment along the way. The route from the northern countries wound through the cliffs of the Caucasus Mountains, ascending to the alpine meadows, then descended again into the subtropics. Every now and then, it crosses rivers flowing into waterfalls, passed through unique forests that had not yet been touched by humans, and suddenly, just 200 kilometers from the snow-capped peaks of the Caucasus, a caravan would find itself in a waterless and sun-scorched desert. From this desert, the road led to Azerbaijan, from where it passed through Persia to Central Asia, India, and China. The great empires fought for almost 3,000 years over the Caucasus Highway. This road was well trodden by huge armies and caravans loaded with countless riches. The Caucasus was a place of a clash of civilians and intercultural dialogue. Its geographical location determined cultural and political history as well as the worldview of Georgia. Anyone interested in how Georgia was created, first of all, should observe its geography. The environment determines the way of life for humans. Now we are in the middle, in the very heart of the Caucasus. The Tarik River has cut a narrow canyon into this huge rocky massif and is roaring downhill in a hurry. This canyon is so narrow that the sun's rays reach its base for just a few hours. Everyone admires the beauty of this place. However, its history is no less remarkable. Here runs one of the most ancient roads in the world, which has been traveled by different people through the ages, from the first Europeans to present day. This is where Georgia begins. From here, we will follow its historical roads and trails. They have many interesting stories to tell us. When you hear about the Caucasus, one can imagine snowy peaks, foaming rivers, narrow canyons, and green slopes. But this was not always the case. Our Earth is in constant motion, constantly changing its appearance. It is beyond the chronology of people or the laws and boundaries set by them. Where there is desert today, the stormy sea used to be, and where there was a sea, it was land. So do not be surprised if you suddenly encounter seashells in the mountains, because just 10 to 12 million years ago, the whole Caucasus, including its beautiful Mkimvartsveri mountain, was the ocean floor. About 5 million years ago, as a result of a tectonic collision, the Caucasus emerged from the water. The Elbrus and the Mkimvartsveri mountains appeared. The land which connects Africa and Europe emerged between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. The Caucasus became a geographical crossroads between Africa, Europe, and Asia. Meanwhile, in Africa, in the cradle of humanity, human ancestors were gradually standing upright and accustomed to walking on two legs, thus preparing themselves for the great journey on Earth. Georgia's nature, climate, vegetation, birds, and animals, the whole environment that later founded Georgia and contributed to the Georgian way of life, was created entirely by the Caucasus Range. The Caucasus begins at the Black Sea and ends at the Caspian Sea, its length about 1,000 kilometers. It is a natural boundary between the two seas, and it protects the South Caucasus from Galician and cold air currents. The Caucasus and the Black Sea make up almost all types of subtropical climates in Georgia, and there are more than 6.5 million species of plants in the Caucasus, more than a quarter of which cannot be found in other places on Earth. Due to its geographical location, the territory of Georgia is of special importance for birds. It is here that two routes of migratory birds pass. One goes along the Black Sea coast. The other crosses the Caucasus Range via the Tarik River, crosses the Jafari Pass, and follows the Arakvi and Migratory rivers. That is why Georgia is one of the four most important places for migratory birds in Europe, along with Gibraltar, Sicily, and the Bosporus. Because of the Caucasus Range, since prehistoric times, Georgia has always been a favorable living space for people. It is difficult to say why it is called the Caucasus and what is the origin of this name. As early as the 6th century BC, the ancient Greeks called this mountain range the Caucasus. They were convinced that it was here that Zeus chained Prometheus to the rock. There is also an assumption that this name came into the Greek language from Persian, and it means big mountain. Strabo believed that the Caspian people lived here, and the name Caucasus originates from their name. In short, there are many versions and assumptions about this name. About 2 million years ago, when politics on Earth, nor geopolitics, did not yet exist, the human predecessor hominid finally began to walk on two legs and learned how to make primitive weapons. He decided to leave drought-prone Africa and set out in search of food and better living conditions. This seemingly small and feeble creature, who was not yet able to use clothing or light a fire, traveled thousands of kilometers, overcame many obstacles, and reached Dmanisi, which was a real paradise for him. Anthropologists, based on the skulls found here, have restored the appearance of people who have settled here 2 million years ago and named them Zezva and Nzia. At that time, the whole Caucasus was a subtropical zone with plants and animals characteristic of the subtropics. Both in nature and climate, it resembled present-day Africa with abundant lakes, forests, and steppes inhabited by rhinos, ostriches, behemoths, horses, deer, and saber-toothed tigers. The warm climate contributed to the diversity of nature, creating favorable living conditions for humans. We are now in a unique place, where the first Europeans lived, the first people on the Eurasian continent, just 80 kilometers from Tbilisi, at the confluence of the Mashevera and Pinazauri rivers, on the high cape, There is only the place in the world where people have lived continuously for 2 million years. As a well-known anthropologist, the director of the Georgian National Museum, David Lortkipanidze, who discovered these ancient people, says, the town of Tbilisi is a time capsule that has continuously preserved a history of 1,800,000 years. One of the strongest and most important Georgian fortress cities in the Middle Ages was located here. Also, a very significant trade route passed here. People have lived here before, in antiquity, the Iron Age, and the Bronze Age. The town of Tbilisi is a monument of world importance because of the skulls of 5 people found here by archaeologists. These people were born and died here 1,800,000 years ago. This means that the oldest person in the world outside Africa lived in Tbilisi. Therefore, Tbilisi is the homeland of the first European. David, you say that Tbilisi is a time capsule. What makes it unique? In the Middle Ages, it was probably one of the ideal strategic places, commercial and political. However, it is already modern history. In the time of these hominids of Tbilisi, 1,800,000 years ago, it really was. We use the term time capsule, which encompasses that most perfectly. This episode in human evolution, which is recorded here. And rhinos lived here at this elevation? Imagine. This is a place where, after a volcanic eruption, the terrain changed. New water systems emerged and new soil. New vegetation began to develop, and this is where a rich and diverse animal world emerged. This hominid who lived here was feeding himself here, and it was a very convenient place for him. The most important fact about the Tbilisi discoveries is that this hominid is the most primitive creature ever found outside Africa, which is manifested primarily in the size of the brain, and as we have shown in recent research, also in structure. That is, he had a very primitive brain. However, he was capable of inhabiting a different geographical zone. If the hominids were only in Africa before, now they are in the temperate zone and, at the same time, of course, they have modern signs appear in their skeletal structure. And this hominid, he was born here, or is this a period of migration? I would say one of the main reasons why we have such a discovery here is luck. We were lucky to find the only place which was well maintained. Naturally, we have to assume that in the Middle East, hominids may have lived earlier, but here we have the most well-preserved, most complete, and richest collection. Tbilisi is, on the one hand, a very important scientific discovery. At the same time, it is a particular platform for us to speak to man about man, to talk about his nature and the human traits that you have mentioned. Compassion and solidarity which distinguishes us humans. Thank you very much. Thank you. Georgia is a very interesting region in terms of the research of the origins of the human race and its development. Many of the ancient habitats and artifacts found here prove that almost all species of humans lived on the territory of present-day Georgia. When we talk about the ancient human species, we must refer to the Neanderthals, who lived throughout the Eurasian continent, including in Georgia. Neanderthals appeared on Earth some 650,000 years ago and became extinct about 30,000 years ago. The term Neanderthal used to be synonymous with being underdeveloped. However, scientists have recently found many arguments to prove that Neanderthals were undoubtedly intelligent creatures. Neanderthals were skilled hunters, and they were hunting large animals, bison, horses, mammoths, with their spears. They also were catching fish. They lit fires, made tools, used needles, and sewed clothing from leather. They held burial ceremonies for their own dead, made musical instruments, and it is possible that they even painted, that is, they had their own culture. Studies show that modern humans have inherited 3 to 5% of their genes from the Neanderthals, and therefore, they are one of our ancestors. The history of the life of the Neanderthals in Georgia is of special interest, and in order to better understand their lifestyle, we will travel to Chiatura in western Georgia. There are many caves where ancient people lived. We arrived in Chiatura and approached the Undu Rock. This is an amazing place. In addition to its scientific interest, this place also provokes an emotional reaction because our ancestors lived and raised their children in this cave for several 100,000 years. It is their perseverance, wisdom, and love of life that has enabled humans to live on Earth until this day. We are guided by archaeologist Professor Nika Tushabramashvili, who discovered the Undu Rock Cave in 2006. Yes, you can climb in from there. Also, you can. This is my first visit to a Neanderthal house. Yeah, sure. Although this place was not their only home, Vasco, you are now standing over several layers of Neanderthal dwellings. Hunters used to come here. It was a temporary camp for these hunters. So who are these Neanderthals? Can you tell me in a word or two who they were? Were they humans? Were they our relatives? Oh, of course, they were human beings, quite ordinary human beings, a bit different from us. It's often said that Neanderthals are extinct, but now we've got a new saying. They are not extinct. They live in us. It is exactly this saying. This phrase is being used by scientists because about 2 to 5% of us is Neanderthal. So this is, for example, the Neanderthal gene is expressed in blonde hair, light-colored eyes. What about their personalities? For example, can you tell us about the culture of the Neanderthals? Well, they were regular people, like us, modern humans. That is, they held funerals, carried flowers, made flutes and drums. They were able to talk, create works of art. They made cave art. So they had musical instruments, and they lacked only wine for a proper feast. I am not sure about the wine. We are in Georgia. Maybe they even had wine. Their lifestyle involved hunting, yes, hunting, and, of course, gathering. Of particular importance to this cave museum is the little image of a man carved on the wall thousands of years ago. It is the only work of prehistoric art found in Georgia, and archaeologists believe it may have belonged to the Neanderthals. This figure has scratches in a diagonal direction. This little man has his hands outstretched this way, diagonally. My opinion is one which has been voiced many times. It is possible that someone witnessed this man fall into this abyss and then created the figure based on this experience. The Netherlands first settled in the Undu Rock Cave 300,000 years ago and lived there for almost 250,000 years. New owners appeared in the cave 40,000 years ago. Homo sapiens, intelligent humans who dwelled here for the next 30,000 years. Even 10,000 years ago, these people raised their descendants inside this cave. So the Undu Rock Cave is a natural museum of the history of human evolution that tells the story of the first steps of humankind. From the Undo Cave, we moved to the Bondi Cave in the same neighborhood. Ancient humans also lived here. First the Neanderthals, and then the Homo sapiens, and, interestingly, flax thread was found here. Now, these are the artifacts that did not have an archaeological context and therefore have been located here. For example, this something, everything here has some purpose, of course. And here is also production leftovers. This thing seems to be a weapon. It has a handle. Look, it was specifically made and used this way. He was holding it in his hand. Here's another thing, which is a production leftover. It is a stone flake. Thus, we deduce that he was making weapons here. The Neanderthals lived on Earth for several 100,000 years. However, their populations were not numerous. Scientists suggest that about 40,000 years ago, from the Pyrenees to Altai, there were a total of 12,000 Neanderthals on Earth, and only a third of them were females, including the Neanderthals living in the Undu Rock Cave and the Bondi Cave in our territory. However, about 30,000 years ago, the Neanderthals became extinct altogether. It is interesting that, according to scientists, one of the reasons for this extinction was the volcanic eruption of Vasil and the tectonic shifts that created the Caucasus. This glorious mountain is Kazbeki, or Vasil, as we Georgians call it. This beautiful peak on the Caucasus Range, whose popularity surpasses even the highest peak in Europe, is Elbrus. Everyone who loves mountaineering dreams of climbing this peak of 5,033 meters. However, in reality, it is a potentially active volcano, not just an ordinary volcano, but a supervolcano that can cause global changes on Earth. The last eruption of Vasil took place in the 7th century BC. Even earlier, there was a grand eruption that changed the nature of the whole Eurasia and shifted the vector of human development. About 40,000 years ago, 3 supervolcanoes erupted almost simultaneously. The Vasil in the Caucasus, St. Anne in the South Carpathians, and the Phlegraean Fields in southern Italy. The ashes covered the whole continent from Western Europe to Siberia. Temperatures dropped by 5 to 10 degrees, and a great volcanic winter began, causing some of the prey which served as food for the Neanderthals to be cut off from them, and another part to be relocated from their usual living places. Scientists suggest that this volcanic winter was one of the reasons for the extinction of the Neanderthals, as they were unaware of agriculture and survived only on the meat from prey which they hunted. However, their caves were not empty for a long time. A new era in human history had begun, and the Neanderthals were replaced by Homo sapiens, here and everywhere around the world. Such caves were very convenient dwellings for ancient people. There was enough warmth. The cave was protected from predators and outside enemies. In addition, there was enough space for the whole tribe to come together and discuss various issues, share experiences with young people, and think of new inventions. The Bondi Cave dwellers were not the only ones who learned how to make flax thread. A relative tribe, which probably spoke the same language, lived not far from them in the Dzudzuana Cave. They also mastered the art of making thread from flax. It has been known that flax was used by humans from ancient times, but the remains of linen fabric found in the Bondi Cave significantly changes our perception of the history of human development. This is flax. This plant has been used by humans since time immemorial, and it plays a very important role in human life. In addition to being used as food, flax is a valuable product for linen production. Flax fiber was used to make clothing, thread, ropes. It was used in the military. It was used for making sails, and so on. Flax was very expensive all over the world, and it is noteworthy that Caucasian flax competed with the highest quality Egyptian fabrics. Prior to this discovery, 29,000-year-old nettle thread was found in the Czech Republic, and it was believed to be the oldest man-made thread. The fiber found in the Bondi and Bondi caves confirms that people living on the territory of Georgia were already wearing clothing made from linen about 35,000 years ago. The Earth is constantly moving and changing its face. Today, we have snow-capped mountains where there was once an ocean floor. They will again be covered by water millions of years later, and the tropics and the subtropics will appear in place of today's glaciers. This cave, which today is not useful for anyone except birds and animals, fully met the requirements of the era in ancient times. It provided all the conditions for people to live and think. The great inventions and discoveries which laid foundations for modern civilization took place in caves like these. However, the history of these caves allows us to foresee not only the past, but also the future, and once again reminds us of the universal law. Only those species that are able to grasp the ongoing changes and adapt to them continue to exist. Such is the story of the creation of our country told in a few minutes. Rising from the ocean floor millions of years ago, land connected Africa and Eurasia. The Caucasus turned into a geographical corridor with a temperature climate and favorable living conditions, which has attracted people since time immemorial. However, with technical progress, human needs increased, which led to wars, and this natural geographical bridge connecting the continents became a place of geopolitical crashes. We will talk about this in the next episode.